So welcome back to this new module. So in this module, we are going to develop this random number generator application. So when I hover over it, then you can see there is a nice transition in this particular card of the random number generator application. If I refresh it, then you can see the counter turns into 0. So when I click on this particular button, then you can see it's going to display the random number and it will be displayed inside this particular HTML element, which is actually a paragraph element. So we are going to develop this simple application and you will learn how to use the random function of the JavaScript and then update this particular element on click of this particular button. So in the next part, we are going to start with the HTML part of the project. Now for the HTML part, I have already created the required file inside the Visual Studio Code, which is index.html, style.css and script.js file. Now inside of this index.html, I have also linked the CSS file and the script file because all of these files are present in the same directory. So I have directly specified the name of the files inside their required properties, or I can say that the required attributes. And I have also launched this particular project inside my web browser. You can see it here. This is the random generator application, or I can say that the random number generator application, right? And I have also launched the final version of the application, which is the final application that we want to develop inside this particular module. Now the first thing is we need to create this container, and inside of that container we need to place these three elements: the heading, which is the random generator, then we need a button, and then for displaying the result we need a paragraph element. So for that we need to come back to the index.html, and also I'm going to open the other version of the application that we want to develop. So the first thing is we need to create the container. So once I press the tab key, then you can see we get the division tag of class name container. Inside of that we need to place the h1 element, and here I will be adding the heading, which is random number generator. Okay, and then after the h1 element we need a button. So here I will be using the button tag. Instead of that I need to specify the id that will be like generate button, and instead of that we need to specify the content generate random number. Alright, and after the button we need to create a paragraph element for displaying the result. So instead of that, first I need to display the 0 because by default we want to display a number 0. Then I'm going to specify the id name to result. Now all of these three elements are now visible to the screen, which is the heading, button and the paragraph element. So in the next part we are going to start with the CSS part of the project so that we can enhance the CSS, and then it will be look like this, which is the final version of the application. So now it's time to start with the CSS part of the project. So for that we need to use this style.css file. Inside of that, first I am going to select the body element, and inside of the body element first I am going to change the background color. So the color that I want is like 292B2C. So this will be the color that I will be used for our own project. Now you can see the color is actually changed. If I remove this property, save it, then you can see we get the white background color. But if I paste that particular code and control save it, now you can see we get this dark gray color, right? And after that we need to set the display to flex. Not like that, we need to set the display flex. And then I'm going to set the justify content to center. If I control save it, now you can see the content is actually at the center of the browser screen. Alright, and then I will be using align items to the center. Save it, and then after that here I will be using the min height property. So min height is going to like 100 VH. Now you can see everything is actually at the center of the browser. Alright, and after that I'm going to set the margin to 0, then padding to 0 as well. Right, and I'm going to use the font family to sans serif. Now you can see the font of the entire project is also changed. And after that I'm going to set the container code. So it is a class selector, so I need to use the dot, and then I need to specify the name of the selector. So first I will be setting the container hover, Instead of that, not container, it's actually like container. Instead of that, first I will be using the transform scale property. So this will be the property and I want to scale it with the 1.0.5. I can do that. It looks like this, but don't worry, we are going to fix it by adding some transition. So here I will be using container, not hover at this point of time. I'm going to use a simple container. Instead of that, first I'm going to select the text alignment to the center, which will align all the three elements at the center of the container. And then I will be using the padding to 30 pixel. After that, I will be using the width to 400 pixel. And then I will be using the background color to white. Control save it and you can see we get the white background color. Now if I hover over it, you can see we get this particular effect, which is actually a transform scale, but we want to add the transition. But before that, I need to apply the border radius. So border radius is going to like 10 pixel so that we can get the rounded corners. And after that, I will be using my favorite property, which is the box shadow property. Not box sizing, it's like box shadow property. The first is 0 pixel, then 4 pixel, and after that I will be using here 8 pixel. Then RGBA value is going to be 0, 0, 0.1. If I control save it, now you can see we get this nice box shadow to this particular container. And after that I will be using the transform property, which is scale, and I will be here providing the 1. Now you can see still it's like not very smooth. Then I'm going to add here transitions like this one, and it's like transition. After that I'm going to here provide the transform property, transform, and here I will be using the 0.3s, and I will be using here the ease in out. So you can see now it's look great. The next thing is we need to select the h1 element and need to style it. So the first property that I want to use here is the color property. So I want a little lighter version of the black color. So that is the reason I will be using the same color which I use for the background of the entire project. I can see the color is actually same. And now I will be using the font size property, which is 28 pixel. And after that I will be using the margin bottom property, which is like 20 pixel again. And then I will be using here the letter spacing. So letter spacing is going to be like 1 pixel. If I control save it, so now you can see it's actually coming at the single line, right? If I increase the line spacing, means the letter spacing, then it looks like this, which I don't want. I want to display it in the single line. So that marks the completion of the code for the h1 element. And after that we need to style the button. So first thing is we need to select the button, then start its block of the code. And inside of that, first I need to specify the padding from top and bottom, which is 10 pixel. And then I need to apply the padding from left and right, which is like 20 pixel. Alright, so again we need to here use the background color. So right now at this point of time I will be using a background color like this, 7C, 5C, which is the dark orange color. And then I'm going to actually change the font color to something like white. And after that I will be adding the border. So border is going to be like none. And then I will be using here border radius. So border radius is going to be like 5 pixel. And then I will be using here cursor, which is going to be the pointer. And then I will be using here font size. So font size is going to be like 16 pixel. And then I will be adding the transition property to the background. And then here I will be using the color. It is going to be 0.3s. You can see now the entire UI part of the button is actually changed. Now I'm going to add the button hover, which is a pseudo class. So hover, and then I need to start its opening and closing bracket. It is actually a background color, so we want to change a background color. So it is like D4 and it's like 5031. If I control save it, now if I hover over it, now you can see the darker version of the button color, right? So it almost looks like the final version of the application. Now we need to actually add a like effect to this particular, which is the fade in fade out animation. which is actually a fade in animation, just like this one. If I refresh it, you can see it has a fade in animation. Also, we need to modify the paragraph element. So the first thing is we need to select the paragraph element to modify its code. The first thing is we need to increase the font size. So font size is going to be like 32 pixel. Then we need to add the color. So color is like hashtag 292B2C. If I save it, you can see the darker version of the color, or I can say that the color that I have used for the entire body. And here I will be using the margin top property. Then I need to apply the font weight, not font size, because we have already applied the font size. So it is like bold. I can say it looks a little bolder. Then I need to apply the animation. So here I will be using the fade in animation, which is like one is in out. Then we need to create the keyframe. So add the rate keyframes. Then we need to provide the identifier, which is like fade in. Okay, and then I need to add here like 0%. Then the body, and then here I need to add the 100%. Then the opening and closing body. Okay, and inside of that we need to first set the opacity to 0, and then I need to add here transform translate y to 20 pixel. Okay, and here inside of that we need to set the opacity again. So opacity is going to like 1, and then I need to add the transform translate y to 0. Right, so if I control save it, you can see now we get this fade in animation to this particular paragraph element. So now our CSS part for the random number generator project is done. So in the next part we are going to start with the JavaScript part of the project. So now it's time to start with the JavaScript part of the project, which is random number generator. So for that we need to use the script.js file, and this file is already linked with the index.html with this particular tag, because the file is actually present in the same directory. So that is the reason I have specified the name directly script.js. Now coming back to the script.js, so here first I am going to create a function. So function, and this function is actually a generate random number function. Okay, and then I'm going to start its block of the code, and here instead of that I'm going to use the return, which is like math.floor. Now floor we are actually using so that we get a positive value instead of the decimal value, or I can say that the floating value, because by default whenever we use the math.random, it's going to give us a decimal based value, which is a float value. Okay, then we need to multiply it with the perfect logic, which is max minus min, and then we're going to add it here 1, so that we can actually get the closest to the number, so that we can also get the 100. And then I'm going to add here a min, which is our minimum value. Right, so this function we're going to call it whenever we click on this particular button. So it's going to give us a random number that we can use to display, or I can say that the update the paragraph element. Alright, and here we need to set the listener to the buttons, but before that we need to get the reference to these particular elements. So first we are going to get the reference to the button. So document dot get element by id, like this, element by id, because we have actually specified the id to this particular button, which is generate button. So that is the reason I am actually here using the get element by id. And then I need to specify the name of the id for the button, and alongside I am going to add the listener to this particular button. So here I will be adding the click listener because I want to listen to the click listener. Then I'm going to specify the comma, and then here I'm going to provide the function. So it is like function, and then we need to start its braces, then its block of the code. Alright, and then inside of this particular block we're going to add our rest of the logic. So the first thing is we are going to use here a var, then minimum value is actually going to 1, which is for the minimum value for the random number. and then I will be using here max is equal to 100, which is the maximum value for the random number, right? And here I will be using the var random number, which is a variable. Random number is equal to generate random number function that we have created. So here I have actually specified the first character of the function as capital 1, but it is best to actually specify the name of the function, means the starting naming character function of the button is to actually smaller one, because the capital 1 is actually used for the name of the classes. That is the reason we need to create the function name with the small case, which is the first character of the function. So we have actually called here a function which is generate random number. Now here we are going to pass these two values, which is min and max. Alright, and this function is also going to accept these two parameters, which is min and max. And this min max are actually used here, means these two min max arguments, or I can say that the parameters, are actually used inside this particular math.floor for getting the random number with the multiplication of this math.random. So after getting the random number, means we are actually calling here a generate random number function by passing the minimum and the maximum value. Now we need to actually set this particular variable value to this particular HTML element. So for that we need to first get the reference to the HTML element. So we have actually specified the ID to this particular paragraph element, which is actually a result. So that is the reason I have used here a function get element by ID. Alright. So here we need to specify the name of the ID, which is result, and after that we want to update its text content. So I will be using here a text content is equal to random number value. Now if I refresh it, you can see the things are actually changed, nothing, but when we click on this particular button, we are now successfully able to generate the random number, and it is actually displayed inside this particular paragraph element. So that marks the completion of the code for this particular random number generator project. So if you like this module, then please leave your review, because your review motivates me to create more awesome and high quality content for you. So thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much.